everyone. Welcome to the Woolly Wonka Fibers podcast. My name is Anne, and this is a video podcast about my knitting, spinning, my indie dye and indie design business, as well as some other crafty things. Today is Monday, the 30th of January, 2017. If you're a new viewer, welcome. I hope you enjoy your trip here with me, and if you are a returning viewer, as always, thank you very much for tuning back in and sharing a little bit of my day. Let's see, it has been a busy couple of 2 weeks. I am just like up to my eyeballs in everything. So, right, what's new? Whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. So let's just jump right on in. The first bit of news is that I have a giveaway to do. This is for a copy of Garter Stitch Revival, which is an Interweave press. I guess they're technically not Interweave press, an interweave.com book. Every project in it has some garter stitch, if not all garter stitch. It's a compilation of designs, so there's multiple different designers in there, probably a bunch of folks you've heard of, but also a design by me, which is the Coney Island shawl. So this is a 2-color shawl, obviously. It is worked up in my Freya DK, which knits up as a sport weight. The colors used in the sample are parchment, which is the really pale color here, and brocade, which is the kind of gold yellow. But if you look on the project page for Coney Island, you will find my tester's version, which is a much different palette, but equally gorgeous. Thank you, Lori, for test knitting that for me. I definitely appreciate that. So you could also knit it up in a fingering weight yarn. You would need 2 skeins of that as well, one of each color. It would be slightly lighter, meaning the weight, it would be an airier, more open type shawl, but it's plenty big so that you would get a decent amount, a decent size. I was looking to see if they had a spread out picture, but they don't. So the finished size as written is 56 inches wide, and that's across the top, long top border, and 24 inches long, which is back neck to hem. Very straightforward project. You actually work the decreases, so you wind up starting down here at this end and working the lace border, and then you do the eyelet pattern that's shown there, and it works into stripes and then a solid, and you decrease as you work along the top edge of the shawl. So even though you have a fair number of stitches to start with, each row gets shorter and shorter, so it knits up really very quickly. Show you a couple other items in here that I thought were really fun. So this is a sweater by Kristen Tendyke. It's called the Just Peachy cardigan, and it's knit in bulky. Just a really great casual sweater with some garter stitch trim on it. That would be a great, you know, toss on with anything kind of project. And this lace scarf, which is a designer I don't know, but her name is Becky Yankowski. It's called the Sea Glass Lace Scarf. And let's see if I can show you guys. Try not to show you too much of the pattern. Let me go back a page. Here's the wrapped version. They did a really fun job. All of the pictures are very upbeat and fun and pretty. They shot this in California, which is really nice. Has really nice lighting along the beach. And then there's this little great, let's see, this is Courtney Kelly. Trying to see if I can find a better picture of this. Let's see if I can fold it. So here is this that has a garter stitch border. It's another pretty shawl. One main color and then stripes. And that is Erin weight, so it's actually a heavier weight shawl. And this shrug I think is super cute. It is by Melissa Labar. Also a bulky weight yarn. Just really simple garter stitch, but how great would that be for summer? So I have one copy of the book. It is the print copy. You can go online to Ravelry. I will put a link in the show notes to take a look at all of the different patterns. And I will be setting up a thread in my Woolly Wonka Fibers Ravelry group. It will say Garter Stitch Revival Giveaway. All you need to do is pop in there and let me know which of the patterns in this you would like most to knit. You're not required to knit it to win anything. You just need to leave me a comment there, and that will get you in the running for this prize. I will draw the winner next Monday, which is February 6th, probably around lunchtime, because that's usually when I sit down for some computer time. So you've got a week in case you're watching this after it's initially aired. So again, Garter Stitch Revival, lots of cute patterns in it. Here's a few more on the back. A cute little cloche, a great yoke neck sweater, and then that's the scarf, this side, that I showed you on the inside. So leave me a comment. Let me know what's your favorite pattern out of this group. Lots of fun things to knit. There's 20 different things, 20 different patterns in the book. So this could be yours. And thank you to Interweave and F&W Media as well for sending a giveaway copy so that I can share that with you guys. Okay, so giveaway, that was fun, right? Right up, first off, let's talk about a finished object. This is a spoiler for the Herbarium Lace Club members. So if you are a member of that portion of the club, this is not the texture color portion, this is the lace portion. You get a sneak peek at the package that will be shipping out to you tomorrow. That's the very first installment in that club for the year. The theme of this particular kit is Monk's Hood, which is a great plant that is featured in several of the Brother Cadfael books in the medieval herbarium. It's a poisonous plant, but boy is it pretty. It's got gorgeous kind of purpley blue flowers. I actually had some in my garden when we lived in Virginia, but it's a plant that actually enjoys moisture, which is not so great for here in the high desert, but there you go. The project is a lace cowl. It is knit from one skein of my Ayrton sock, which is the merino cashmere nylon base. The colorway of the sample is Monk's Hood. And here is the project. So it's a long cowl. It's long enough to be worn twisted and fill in nicely in a jacket, but you could also wear it long as a scarf. It's got a little pointed leafy border, which you can see right there, and then the body is knit using this little drooping hooded flower pattern, and it's finished off with a little picot edge. So super soft. I think a good in-between seasons item, because you can wear it a number of different ways. You can also wear it like this, almost like a shawl, and then put a pin in here if you're so inclined. Have that to wear. So there is that. That will be shipping out tomorrow. I have all the yarn dyed, the pattern is ready to go, and I'm just going to tuck this on for a little extra warmth while we go along. There we go. So look for that, I would say by the end of the week for most everybody, unless you're overseas, in which case it may be another probably week beyond that, mid-February, I would guess. So that is a done thing. On my needles currently, I am working on, I should say I finished a shawl. That is my Stitches West shawl. That's a 2-color shawl. That's out for testing right now. Thank you, Jenny, for working on that. And So that will be ready to release closer to the end of the month. It will be in my booth at Stitches along with kits for it. It is also in the same MCN base, which I love. It's so soft, it's so squishy, it's just delightful to wear. So then on the needles, I'm currently working on my DK weight cabled jacket that I've got a deadline for at the end of the month. And I just finished kind of dealing with all the numbers for the March Sweater Club sweater. So that will go on the needles probably either today or tomorrow. I know where I want to go with it, and I just need to knit up the sample. That's also kind of an end of the month deadline. So the only other thing that I have in the very short term that needs to happen is a simple hat and mittens pair. That's also March 1st kind of deadline. So I'm making progress on that, and I wanted to say a huge thank you to my friend Susan, who's been helping me out with some sample knitting, because I am so busy in the dye room, it's really hard for me to carve out a chunk of time to work on sample knits. And while I am a fairly fast knitter, knitting a lot of garments at once is mentally difficult, just to switch gears and to be writing the pattern to make sure that the sample matches what I have written as the draft and all of that. It's just I need like just a week where I do nothing but power knit. We did photograph the spring collection for Knit Filament magazine. That will be out around the 1st of March. My partner Kathleen Dames is working on the graphics layout for advertising. We will have pre-orders available again if you would like to order a print copy and then get a copy of all of the patterns delivered to your Ravelry library for free. If you want to wait and kind of see what is going to be in the collection, or maybe pick and choose, we will also have the patterns available as standalone releases, again, right around the 1st of March. So that is the world of knitting. I will have some of the samples from Filament to share with you guys probably in my next podcast, so stay tuned for those. I'm excited about that. We had a really fun shoot. It's a model I've worked with before, and she's in the Air Force, and nothing phases her. She's a really good egg. She's fun to work with. She always says, oh yeah, I can do that, or I hand her some strange prop and she's like, oh, what can I do that's interesting with this? So we had a fun time, and got to spend the day outside, and it was not snowing, which it was the previous weekend when I was attempting to shoot photos, so a little more spring-like even though it was cold. So that's where I am with knitting. Let's move on to some spinning, because I do have a fair number of little tidbits to talk about there. I have a finished spin to share. This is the mixed BFL fiber in the Ferris Night colorway from GLBLF. I spun this as a 2-ply. It is a light sport weight yarn. I spun it as a fractal spin, so there is a set of subtle color shifts, but realistically there's a whole lot of this kind of plum, wine, burgundy, whatever color you want to call that, with just little tiny pops of the turquoise blue and the gold that were in the original roving. So it's a very subtle set of color changes, and it's, I think, gonna knit up mostly like a tweed, which will be kind of a nice, sorry, did you guys hear that? That is the dog sleeping, dreaming, harumphing. I don't know, she's been on a bender this weekend. This is the younger dog, our Lizzie. Crazy dog. Anyway, I think this will knit up fairly tweedy. Nothing specifically earmarked for this. It may go in the to sell pile. If you love it, send me a note. It can be yours. Otherwise, it'll go into stash, and we'll see what it wants to be when it grows up. So again, a mixed BFL, 336 yards and 3.8 ounces in the finished skein. Came out really quite nicely. I think it would be awesome as a pair of socks, frankly. But we'll see. Anyway, so I have that finished. Next up on the wheel, which you guys have already seen, is the hand paint colorway from the Willy Wonka Fibers Club in January. It's the Wrinkle in Time colorway. So this is also on BFL. This is my braid, and so that's going to happen next this week on deck. And then I got, let's see, let me make sure I have the right months for these. So I got the December and January clubs from Ocean Wind Knits this past week. Lori asked if it was okay if she just sent them both, because it's almost cheaper to ship things from Canada, I guess, if it's, you know, 1 4-ounce package. It doesn't cost that much more to add in another 4 ounces as opposed to sending them separately. I mean, either way, it's fine, because, you know, I'm way behind on stash spinning, so not like this is happening today and I was waiting on them. So the first one is the December Club. It is Organic Merino Roving. The colorway is called Fishing Float, and that is the inspiration picture. And here is the braid. Lots of really pretty soft blues, little spots of brown, kind of a very pale sand, like taupe color. Very pretty. I love the soft colors in that. So that will be a pleasure to spin up. And then the January Club, excuse me, I'm fighting a little cold here, is Amylite. And here is the inspiration picture. So this is January 2017, which I guess you all probably figured out. Polworth. This one's on Polworth, and it is a gorgeous set of pinks, pinky rose, some blues, some sort of sea glass green colors, kind of dark purpley gray. Also just beautiful. So I have those to look forward to. Again, not going to get them spun this month, but at some point. Although this does have some pinks. If you are participating in our Spin from Stash 2017 in the Willy Wonka Fibers group, our 2 prompts are something red with red or pink in it. Just saying, although this also has some pinkish bits in it, and something that is a fiber you love to spin, either a blend or straight wool. And you know, I love Polworth, so this one might have some candidacy for later in February if I get that far. So that is what I'm working on in the world of spinning. I think that is it for that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the stitching I've been doing. If you are somebody who also watches my floss tube videos on this same channel, there will be a January recap and February plans update sometime this week. Maybe Wednesday. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. I was looking at my calendar to see how much craziness is on the schedule for this week. So Wednesday or possibly Thursday. Wanted to share with you guys that I've been working on this particular design called the Village of Hawk Run Hollow. The designer is Carriage House Samplings, and so this is kind of a sampler set of blocks. I'm working on 1 block a month. So I had finished this block, which is the very first one, and I just started this one right here. So I'll go into more detail in this in the floss tube end of things, but just to give you guys who are here for kind of the high level stuff, I decided when I wanted to do this that I was going to personalize some of the blocks. So for instance, this center block, I don't know if you can read that, but it's a St. Peter's Church. And then the one that's over here that says Hawk Run Hollow City Hall. The one beneath it, that's the blacksmith. The one over here, I'll be personalizing. The grist mill, I'll be personalizing. And then these two, this one and this one, the Hawk Run Schoolhouse and Apple Orchard Farm. So I know I've spoken about my grandparents a lot. My grandmother grew up in a very rural area of central Pennsylvania on a dairy farm, and she has a huge extended family still there, and the local creek that runs through there is called Moose Run. And so where her family's farm was is kind of down in the hollows. So I'm going to convert things like the City Hall of Hawk Run Hollow, this one right here, I'm going to convert that to say Moose Run Hollow. I need to look up the date that they hit that area and put that date in here. But for the church, there is a little church that in the last 10 years or so of her life, my gram worked on restoring. It's the church that her mom went to. It's a Seventh-day Adventist church. So I'm going to be personalizing that block to read Advent Church down here at the bottom. And I'm actually taking out the information about the Reverend. I couldn't find enough history that I wanted to make it be personalized for someone who was a minister at that particular church. So I'm going to be taking out those words, and I'm going to add 2 little birds flying there. And I'm also going to change the stained glass windows in the church. This is a very simple church, but it's white, and it actually kind of looks like that with the doors, but the windows are outlined in kind of a Tiffany blue, something like that. They did some research on the paint, and the pews and the window trim were originally painted that it's not quite sky blue, it's a little bit darker, but it's in that same kind of light turquoise feel to it. So not that I've gotten very far and that you could tell these things, but here is where I am on this project currently. That's the first block, completely done, and you can see I've just started the second block. So I'm working away on that. That is my week, the project for the week. We'll see how far I get on it. It's not a super quick stitch, so right now I don't have a ton of stitch time, and my weekends have kind of been eaten up with various and sundry things. So we'll see how far I get on that. But that is kind of a fun project. And so for instance, for this block right here that talks about the blacksmith, I'm going to change this to my great-grandfather's name. He was a teamster and super good with horses. He started driving a team between central Pennsylvania and Ohio when he was 13, and he did that until he got married. I'm going to change the name of the boarding house right here to my Gram's first name. The grist mill right here in the center, I'm going to change that and put my great uncle, his name in there. He loved to farm, my Uncle Claire. And then obviously for this one, that's Hawk Run Schoolhouse, I'll change that to Moose Run Schoolhouse. And the Apple Orchard Farm, I think I'm going to change to Johnson Orchard Farm because that was my Gram's maiden name. That was her family name. So I'm actually using my charting software, my knitting charting software, to rechart the sections that need to be redone. So I mean, I didn't rechart this entire block. I just recharted up here at the top where I took the names out with the 2 birds, and then down here at the bottom where I'm changing it to say Advent Church. I just did that. So I mean, graph paper would have worked as good, but this way I can kind of futz with it, manipulate the graphics as I need to go. And I have the block figured out, so now that I know the size of it, I can kind of move the other stuff around inside that block as I need to. So that's what I'm working on in stitching. I wanted to talk to you guys about books. I have 2 books this week that I finished up. They're very different, but I enjoyed both of them for different reasons. So this first book, I Shall Be Near to You, sorry for the glare. I started this book and I was about halfway through it and I almost put it down. I think if you read my blog, I noted how I found the main character to be kind of annoying. So the premise of this book is it's set during the early years of the Civil War. This young woman gets married to a local boy, and the day after they are married, he leaves her at his parents' house and he goes off to enlist. And she decides 2 days later that she's not going to sit around and be bossed around by her mother-in-law. She misses her husband dreadfully, so she decides that she's going to cut her hair off, dress as a man, and go and enlist. So she does that. They're in New York, so they both enlist for the Union. So she winds up following him to the equivalent of basic training camp. They go through basic together, and then they march into Virginia, and they go through the Battle of Bull Run, and the book ends just after the Second Battle of Bull Run. So, like I said, the beginning part of this book, and I should say that the author used several different records and memoirs or diaries or letters combined from various women who actually went and fought as men in the Civil War to create this sort of composite. But there was one woman who the author had more of her historical record to use when writing this book. So there's one woman whose story probably is more of the details in this book than the other bits combined. I really did not like the character at the beginning. I could not wrap my head around her. And I felt it was like a little implausible that she would just toddle off to war and her husband would be okay with her being part of his regiment. And yeah, you know, she's an independent-minded woman, but it just, I don't know, there was parts of it that did not ring true to me as something that would have actually occurred during that time period. That said, I got about, as I say, about halfway through the book, and I don't know if the author maybe found her voice a little bit better or if they edited down what was going on, but at any rate, the last half of this book was worth the trip to the library. I rarely get so emotionally involved with historical fiction that I cry over the book. I cried at the end of this book. And the author does a really nice job because the title seems an obvious one, right? I Shall Be Near to You. And it's about this woman who goes to be near her husband. The very last chapter and the little epilogue ties this theme back in. I don't want to give too much away if you decide to read it. Ties this theme back in so beautifully. It's going to be a book that I think about the epilogue in the future. So if you decide to get this book and read it, my suggestion would be to flip to the back, and there is a, let's see, 2-page author's note about, it starts off, there was a real Rosetta who fought in the Civil War. Read those 2 pages first, because I think they help you put the first half of this book into a better perspective. So anyway, I would give this book, if we're going on the 5-star rating system, 4.5, 4.25 stars. Not the best book I've ever read because of that first half. It took me just a while to get into the story, but the second half totally redeems this book. So I Shall Be Near to You. The author is Erin Lindsay McCabe. This was a Goodreads best read from 2016, which is why I had picked it up. So recommend this one if you like historic fiction, if you are into the Civil War, and sort of women's studies, a good choice. Next, I picked this book up because it was a one-word title and I needed that for my challenge read. It is called Uprooted. The author is Naomi Novik. I could not put this book down. I loved this book. I loved everything about this book. This book pushes all of the right buttons for me. It is it's not a retelling of a fairy tale, but it's sort of a new fairy tale set in a traditional style. There are portions of this that remind me of Lord of the Rings. The basic premise, there is it goes off of the concept that of the old stories about dragons, where a maiden from the village would be sacrificed to the dragon. And so that's what happens in this group of villages once every 17 years. The twist on the story is it's not a dragon as we think of, like a serpenty mythical creature. That's what they call the local wizard, is the dragon. And every 17 years he shows up in the chosen village, and he picks a girl who goes off to the castle with him. When she comes out of the castle, she's a completely changed person. She doesn't stay at the village. She disappears, basically. She severs all of her ties with her family and goes away. So she might as well have sort of been eaten by the dragon, in that the chosen girl, falls out of the villager's life. The year that is coming up, there is one girl in the village, and they know that the dragon always picks someone who has a special quality. Can sing the best, is the prettiest, is the best cook. And there's a young woman in the village who's 17, Cassia, and she is all of these things. She is beautiful, she is bright, she is funny. Her parents have known from the time she was born that she is the one the dragon was going to pick out of this group of 17-year-old girls. And so her best friend, who is she's the village's woodcutter's daughter. She spends most of her time foraging in the wood. She's always kind of a mess. Her hair's, always coming out of its braids. She's always got mud on her tunic, all of that. She's upset because she knows Cassie is going to be picked. And she's been trying to figure out what she can do to save her friend from this awful fate, but she can't come up with anything. So the day comes, the dragon comes into town, goes down the line of girls. He stops at Cassia, and then he picks our heroine, Agnes. And so Agnes, who is basically unprepared for anything in her life, has to go off to the castle with the dragon. So it turns out the reason that he's picked her is because she is the girl in the village of that year who has the most potential for magic. And so he takes her to his tower, and he starts trying to teach her all of these basic, very rudimentary magic spells, and she's awful at them. She can't do any of them. Sorry. Cold. So it takes her a very long time, and of course she's panic-stricken, she's lonely, she's afraid that he's going to put her to death. She can't do anything right. She finds in his library this one little book that has all these handwritten things in it. And she feels a great affinity for this book, and it turns out that she actually has great magic, and she has magic that is sort of outside the normal magic, where she can do spells, but they have to be her spells, and they're all kind of rooted in these very simplistic chants and mythical songs and stories that are part of the culture of her village. And so she winds up having this amazing set of skills, but the dragon doesn't know what to do with her because they aren't book learning type skills. So She and the dragon wind up heading off on this great set of adventures to try to protect the kingdom. They live on the edge of the wood, and that's a capital W. And the wood features in this book as its own entity, as its own character, as this malevolent force that's been swallowing up these villages that live on the edge of the woods. And the dragon has been attempting all these years to keep pushing the boundaries of the wood back to save these small villages. So this book, it is epic. There are battles. There are knights in shining armor. There are mythical creatures that show up. There's enchantment. There is magical spells. There are bonds of true friendship. There are all kinds of amazing things that happen in this book where Agnes essentially goes on a quest, and she finds not only out who she is, but she finds out a great many things about how the world works. So I had no time to read this book, and literally every time I sat down, like if I had a minute and a half while I was making a cup of tea, I read 3 pages. I loved this book so much. Jenny, I think you read Iceland, the Betsy Tobin book that I recommended last year. If you liked that book at all, you will adore this book. I like this book even better than Iceland. It's got the same mythical, magical themes in it. It's got a strong heroine, but she's realistic. I just got totally caught up in this book. I could not put it down, and I was so sad. I even got to the point last night I had 1 chapter left, and I put it down because I couldn't bear to finish the book. I wanted to so badly, but I couldn't bear to read that last chapter because then the book would be over. This particular author has, it says that she's got another, this is not a book in a series as far as I know. It doesn't seem to be, but she has another series that's the Tamar series, that's about dragons, and there's 8 volumes in that. And then she has been nominated for the Hugo Award, which is sort of sci-fi magic type stuff. Absolutely. You know, I'm going to put this on my probably top 5 books of the year list already, even though it's already January. Yeah, great book. And I'm going to go back to the library and see if I can find other things by this author. She writes really well. The characters are beautifully developed. There's lots of like little hidden meanings that it takes you another chapter to find out how this is going to unfold. There's tons of layers. She brings characters in. You think they're gone. She brings them back. And even though there's a lot of strife and difficulty and hard times where the characters have to go through sort of a lot of awfulness to get out to the other side, the last 2, 3 chapters are so lyrical and redeeming. Makes you feel like there's hope in the world. So I think we all could use that at this particular point in time. Uprooted, Naomi Novik. Highly recommend this one. Go grab yourself a copy and read it. I may even wind up with a print copy of this book. I enjoyed it so much I may wish to read it again, which does not happen very often. All right, I think that's it. I've managed to talk for 40 minutes again today. Obviously, don't get me started on books because they just go on and on. Anyway, I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. I hope you have a wonderful time in between. Lots of good crafting time for you with any luck. I will be back mid-February with our first full week of February with another update. So hoping to get a lot of knitting in between now and then accomplished. You guys take care. I will check in with you then. Bye-bye.